Thanks for tuning in to the Our Lads Football Network as we handicap games this week, week 2 for the 2021 season in college football with Marc Lawrence of PlaybookSports.com. Marc, good to talk to you again.
Likewise, Greg, it's great to be back talking football, and our direction this week is going to be going to the college football side of things.
Yeah, we're going to talk a lot of college football this year. And by the way, I am going to talk some NFL on Friday mornings with Ryan Dunleavy of the New York Post. So we'll have college football, NFL here, all gift wrapped for you. And a lot of even if Marc is not on the show, a lot of what I'm going to talk about, even on the show with Ryan, will definitely reflect a lot of the information that I'm going to use as far as the trends that you can get right here in the playbook guide. So you can order this, get it mailed to you. If you're old-fashioned like I am, you want a physical guide, you can take this and order it at playbooksports.com. Or you can get the guide digitally. So you can also, if you're maybe you get both of them. You get tangible guide in your hands. You can also get all this information in a digital format. And then the newsletter. That's the primo part of everything you do, Marc. That's the newsletter. And the newsletter is $99. And if you use the promo code PRIME, 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 we'll give you a $10 discount. So instead of $99, it'll be $89. And you can see the number on the screen right there to call in, 1-800-321-7777.
That's correct, Greg. The football newsletter is what everything is all about. It's a compilation of, from the preview guide magazine, what we've heard and what we're getting ready to look at for the weekend. So it's a good deal. It's a $99 special price, but for Prime code listeners, $89. So it's a heck of a nice deal.
And what is it? Now, if somebody just wants to get the newsletter for, let's just say, like they do with the sheets, we do the horse racing show with John Hardoon. And I don't know. I mean, I've never asked John if he actually probably should, whether or not he has deals for, hey, I just want to get the sheets for the week, or I want to get the sheets for a race, or I want to get the sheets for the entire year. So how does that work if somebody just wants the sheets for a week? The sheets. If anybody wants to read the newsletter for a week.
Yep. My newsletter, right. Well, the newsletter is $10 each
What
week.
was that?
So it's available online, playbooksports.com. You can
$10. Okay.
$10 weekly. Right. Or the special package is $99 to the Super Bowl. That's a heck of a savings. So you're getting over 20 plus issues. And it's only $89 if you mention the code.
All right. There you go. So again, $10 weekly. But if you're somebody that wants to invest on the entire season, once again, you get 20 plus issues through the season. You can call the number on the screen, 800-321-7777, and use the promo code PRIME, PRIME, and you'll get the $10 discount. Let's get right to it now, Marc, and let's talk about some of these games. And so I have, I don't know, about 10 or 15 games that I looked at, and I said, okay, these are the games I like. Now let me see whether or not I'm going to make the final call to pick the games or not. And when I do that, I usually then turn my attention to the newsletter. And that's why I want to turn my attention to you, because you produced a newsletter. And so it's a shortcut for me to be able to say, okay, what do you think about these games? And then I'm going to make my final decision on the games and post them up. And it'll be available if anybody cares just to follow and track, my picks for the week after the show is over. Okay, so let's start with some games in the SEC. And one of the games that caught my eye was Pitt as a 3-point favorite at Tennessee. Actually, just so you know, I'll give you an advance. There's 4 games from the SEC that caught my eye. Pitt at Tennessee, Colorado, Texas A&M, Arkansas, Texas, and Colorado State, Vanderbilt. So those are the 4 games. So we'll start with Pitt and Tennessee. And, things aren't going real well in Tennessee when they're an underdog to Pitt. Not that Pitt's a bad football team, but Pitt is not exactly one of the best, top 15, top 20 team. ACC's had their share of problems. They had problems last week. But Pitt looks like they're still going to be a pretty good football team. Pickett is probably, look, I know what Tennessee throws out there, a quarterback, and Pitt's got a better quarterback with Pickett. I think Tennessee didn't look all that great, even though the score indicated so against Bowling Green. but they actually struggled for most of a half or three quarters until finally blowing out the terrible Bowling Green Falcons team. But I just think Pitt's a better team, and I'm willing to give 3 in this spot.
Well, Vegas thinks they're the better team as the 3-point favorite in this game. There's some negatives here looking at the Tennessee side of the equation. They're 1-10 to the spread when they're home off a win of 14 or more points. They're also 0-13 to the spread as a dog of fewer than 14 points after they scored 35 or more of the last game. The Pitt Panthers are a really rugged football team. I like their head coach, Pat Narduzzi. He does a great job, especially defensively, getting his football team up for games. I don't know if Pat Narduzzi is all that good as a coach on the road. He's a really good underdog coach. I'm going to stay away from the game. I don't like laying points with Pittsburgh on the road, especially like Tennessee. While the Vols might not be what they were, it's still a dangerous site to be laying or taking as a 3-point home dog. I'm going to pass the game.
Yeah, so look, like you mentioned, 13 straight. They are 0-13 against the spread as dogs of less than 14 after they score 35 or more. That is pretty sizable when you combine the other one you mentioned, 1-10 against the spread, last 11 as a home at home following a straight up win of 14 or more. And they're 1-7 against the spread in their last 8 as non-conference dogs of 3 or more. And right now they're a 3-point dog. Okay, let's now go to that second game. Now, it's a neutral game, Texas A&M and Colorado. And look, this is why you got to watch the games. And this is why I really love recording as many games as I can, especially on the SEC channel or the ACC channel, Big Ten Network. I just try to get all these games because you look at the final score and you go, oh, Texas A&M blew out a team from the MAC. Okay, well, that's not a big surprise. But if you watch the game, Texas A&M had some struggling issues at quarterback. I mean, they have a young quarterback, Haynes King. He's got a strong arm. His feel for the game, not there yet. He's got a long way to go. He's got picked off 3 times against Kent State. And the team had 5 turnovers in all against Kent State. They did rush for over 300 yards. That was the reason they were able to cruise. But they're a 17-point favorite in this game. And I just think Colorado, Carl Durrell seems to do a pretty good job in these spots, if I recall. So I like Colorado getting 17. I actually think this is one of those neutral site games that I could see going deep into the fourth quarter.
Well, I wouldn't quite go full neutral to the game because it's being played at the Denver Broncos home field.
Yeah, I know.
So you're not going to see as many A&M fans, Buffalo fans. But I'm a big Carl Durrell fan with you. I liked what he did last year. He got this team's attention. He turned them from a stone loser to a winner, took them to a bowl game last season. And the word I hear out of Boulder is they would run through a brick wall for Carl Durrell. This is a big football game for the program here with highly rated A&M coming in here. As you mentioned, they were sloppy in their win last week. They're only 8-17 to the spread in their road opening games against non-conference opponents. And if you look at Carl Durrell, I love all the good things that he's done here, as I mentioned before. But you also have a coach here in Carl Durrell that, if you take a look at his numbers, he's terrific. As a dog in his career, he's 19-8 to the spread, including 7-3 straight up and 9-1 to the spread at home. This is quasi home, but it's not on the road. I love the Carl Durrell underdog numbers, and I think A&M is an overrated football team.
Yeah,
I'm with you. I like the Buffaloes.
I knew there was a Carl Durrell trend in there somewhere, so I'm glad you threw it out there. And you're right; it's not really neutral, so that's the advantage again to Colorado that they're getting 17. And even though it is a neutral, Colorado should have a ton of fans there. Okay. Next up in the SEC that I was considering is Arkansas against Texas. Now, I was very impressed with what Texas did in their first game. And I think a lot of that had to do, and I thought we saw that quite a bit in some of the matchups week 1. And we might see that again, at least for the first home matchups in some of these situations, because the fans weren't allowed to go to the games. And, I think that definitely has a lot to do with how the energy is around some of the programs, especially the new coaching staffs. And I think Texas had all that going for them. And Texas was not going to sleep on Lafayette. This wasn't like this was a 17, 18-point spread. This was like a 9-point spread for a Sun Belt team to go to Texas, and Texas handled them. But freshman quarterback Hudson Card is now going to be playing in his first road game. I think that's important. This is a huge rivalry, and these two teams, though, haven't played since the 2014 bowl matchup that Arkansas won. Unfortunately, there are a lot of trends, or a couple of trends, that go very far against Arkansas that I'm concerned about. And the spread is 7, so it's not like it's double digits. Texas still has more talent on the team. I just think that this is a potential for Arkansas to hang in there, and they're looking for that first big win under Pittman too. We'll see if they get it, but I was intrigued by this matchup. I am afraid of those trends, though, that work against Arkansas.
Well, this is a huge step-up game for Arkansas, and it's a what you would call a football game that puts them on the playing field if they're able to pull the rug. You have Texas, as you mentioned here. Houston Card makes his first road start. That's really, really a tough nut to have to crack, especially when you opened up at home and had the luxury of the home fans there. Now, all of a sudden, you're on the road. You take a look the last 3 years, second game of the season spread. They're also 0-3 to the spread. Their last 3 as non-conference road favorites. I'm going to stay at home with Arkansas in the game here as well. I think this has got let down for Texas written on it. And I think it's a big step-up game for Arkansas, who well remembers Texas from their days back in the Southwest Conference and the Big 12 Conference as well. Also, I think that's a bigger game to Arkansas, and I'll take the points with the Hogs.
Okay, the other game I mentioned was a game that nobody's going to watch, and that's Colorado State as a 7-point favorite against Vanderbilt. And I was actually surprised that Colorado State's only a 7-point favorite. I don't care that they lost to an FCS team. They lost to one of the best FCS teams. So that is a very good South Dakota State football team. And Colorado still is in better shape than Vanderbilt. I mean, Vanderbilt was just pathetic in their week 1 in the matchup against their FCS opponent. They scored 3 points. You know, they have a new coach who's a defensive coordinator, first time there. It's going to be a long rebuild in Vandy. And I just don't think, let's put it this way. I know these are not, I don't know tell you the truth, what we have with the Colorado State Rams. Because, like I said, South Dakota State's a good football team. I just don't think Colorado State's so bad that they shouldn't be able to cover 7 against Vandy.
This is a sort of a horse race analogy here, Greg, where you've got a claimer stepping in against a horse that's maybe knocked around in stakes races. It hasn't won any stakes races. Vanderbilt hasn't won any games of late. But their pedigree, just the fact that they live in the Southeast Conference, I think I know they got a new coach and they struggled last week in their first football game, but Colorado State, you're asking them to suddenly become a good team. And I don't know if that's possible this quick for Colorado State. From my database, there's a great stat in this game that supports Vanderbilt. And basically what it is they're a 17 returning starter underdog, of which a ton of teams are this year. It's game 2 of the football season. They're coming off a loss of 15 or more points, and their opponents also off a loss. These dogs are 18-2 to the spread since 1990. That's a pretty strong number here supporting Vanderbilt in the football game. And I got the Rams just 2-10 to the spread stirred up against SEC. I'm going to hold my nose, play the points with Vanderbilt, and play the pedigree in this series or in this game.
All right, sounds good. And a couple more notes before we leave the SEC. Kentucky, 5-point favorite against Missouri. The dog in the series is 4-1 straight up, 5-0 against the spread in the last 5, including Missouri as a dog last year, upsetting Kentucky when they were a 3.5-point dog. I say that because I like Kentucky. But I'm going to stay away from the game. I think those trends matter, especially in conference matchups. I am intrigued, though, by Kentucky's quarterback situation because they finally have a quarterback that can throw the football. The kid threw for 367 yards and 4 touchdowns. And as you said in the playbook guide, Kentucky came into the season with 12 of the last 16 games passing for less than 100 yards. That's pathetic. And the first game of the season with their new quarterback, they throw for 367. And this is a program, Mark Stoops has done a really good job with the defense. If you can finally have a quarterback to throw around there as well, then that's going to make things interesting in Kentucky. Plus, Kentucky has covered 8 straight off a non-conference game versus teams that are 500 or better. There's some conflicting trends in here. But this is one of those games I'm probably just going to stay away from because the dog has been mighty tough over the last 5 matchups.
Well, I respect Mark Stoops as a head coach for Kentucky. I also respect Elijah Drinkwitz from Missouri. I think he's doing a nice job with this program and getting it ready to take a big step forward. You look inside the series of the history of the matchup here, it's been all dog. In the last 5 matchups, the dog has cashed 5 straight games, and in fact, the underdog has won 4 of those games straight up. So now you're going to ask Kentucky to lay points into a dog-oriented football series. That's a little bit tough with a quarterback making a second start, a new quarterback making his second start. They almost always regress after a first start and take that step backwards here. You've got Stoops just 3-10 straight up in Southeast Conference opening games. I'm going to play with Missouri football game and play Drinkwitz in his best role, that is as a dog in conference play.
All right, let's talk about some of these Big Ten matchups. And really the biggest matchup, I'm just surprised that the Ohio State-Oregon game is a noon kickoff. And the Michigan-Washington game is the primetime game. I'm shocked by that. But okay, great for us. We get a big time 12 o'clock matchup. I just don't know what to expect from Oregon because of what happened last week. You know, they almost lost the game and they got yardage. They got outgained by Fresno State. So I don't know what to make of that. We don't know if Thibodeau's going to be playing. We don't even know if he does. Is he 100%? But what I do know is that Mario Cristobal has covered 12 of 16 versus undefeated opponents and 9-1 in his last 10. 14 points, a lot of points to be giving up a really good football team. So I'm kind of leaning towards Oregon. And, you know, good football teams getting plus 450 on the money line always intrigue me as well.
I can understand that, you know, Oregon taking a good chunk of points in a football game like this. But you mentioned about Thibodeau. He is the best defensive player, and he will be a first, second, or third pick in this year's draft. He's just that good. He's going to have to be in the lineup and also healthy for me to make a case or look at Oregon here. One you hit on at the beginning of the review here is that a 12 noon Eastern start is 9 a.m. body clock start for Oregon. That's not a good thing when you're asking college football kids to go out and play a game at 9 o'clock in the morning, especially against a team of the caliber of the Ohio State Buckeyes, who know how to win football games. And they're pretty physical in doing just that. I like the Buckeyes here. Ryan Day has won 23 games in a row. It has not during the regular season times. And they're also at the shoe in their home opener, where they're 32-2 straight up and 22. I'm on the Buckeyes in this game.
All right. By the way, I was actually even thinking about is it possible? What do you think about the Buffalo-Nebraska game? Because Nebraska's a 2-touchdown favorite, 13 points. They're 1-5 against the spread. Their last 6 as a home favorite. And I just don't know. I mean, I could see. I mean, Buffalo has overachieved, no question. But now they're in a different class. You know, you could easily see Nebraska's got more talent, but you know, it's like it just wouldn't shock me if Nebraska lost to Buffalo. It just wouldn't, the way things have been going for Scott Frost over the last few years. And by the way, Nebraska's got to play at Oklahoma next week.
Yeah, there would normally be a look ahead here for Nebraska if they were off a win or playing some good football. They're not playing good football here, obviously. Scott Frost still on that hot seat that he left last year. This is a Buffalo football team that was really decimated when they lost Lance Leopold, their head coach, when he went to Kansas late, and we took along with him 5 assistant coaches, and he had 17 players transfer out of the program, did Buffalo, after Leopold left. Those are kids he recruited and said, we didn't come here to play with anybody other than Lance Leopold. So they went to the transfer portal, and a lot of them went over to Kansas as well. So this is not the Buffalo team that we've known here the last couple of years because of the Leopold situation here. And you just know that Nebraska is just looking to take all this angst out on some football team. It wouldn't surprise me if it was Buffalo, but I do know from having my experience many, many, many years in this business, you don't lay double-digit points with bad football teams. And that being the case, Nebraska is still categorized as a bad football team, so I'm going to pass the game.
A big matchup, one of the big matchups of the week is Iowa at Iowa State. And when I saw Iowa State was like a 24-point favorite last week against Northern Iowa, I was like, why? I mean, I've seen this story every year with Iowa State that they get off to a slow start. They play these, Northern Iowas of the world and so forth, especially those rivals. And they always wind up, a lot of them are closer than you expect. And it happened again last week. I mean, they had 335 total yards of offense. And now they're a 4.5-point favorite against Iowa, who has beaten Iowa State 5 straight times as a favorite. So what you're doing is you're going, okay, we're going to take a team that has lost 5 straight games to a rival as a dog, and we're going to flip them into a favorite against that team. And that team's a good football team. Iowa's a heck of a football team. So as much as I like Iowa State, they're given 4.5. I just have to take the points in this one. Maybe Iowa State finally wins one of these games against Iowa, but I've still taken the points.
Well, one of the things I've learned in my long, long trail in this industry is I don't ever handicap the odds maker. They know exactly what it is doing. I might not like a number or a line that they put on a football game. I might not agree with a line or a number they put on a football game. But it's a solid number, and there's a reason why Iowa's favorite in a contest like this. You mentioned Northern Iowa coming into that football game here. That is a typical Northern Iowa football game. Northern Iowa is the red-headed stepchild play, the team that doesn't get any respect or love from the big boys in the state, the Power 5 conference schools in the state. They get up. That's their game of the year for Northern Iowa. And you go back and you look at the past results. I mean, it bears that out. The last 9 games, Northern Iowa has won 3 times, and 4 of those games were decided by 6 or fewer points. So it didn't surprise me at all to see that game close. And you've got a team here in Iowa State who is really, really good this year. This head coach, Matt Campbell, I think is one of the top 5 coaches in all of college football. And I wouldn't say that there was a look ahead in this football game, but I do know that he will be in the hunt in the Big 12 race, and I'd be surprised if he's not playing Oklahoma for the Big 12 Conference Championship. I like Iowa State in this contest here. You got Iowa wins big over Indiana last week. They had 2 in the game. Those are what I'm going to say statistically, if you like stats, they're phony scores. Yes, they did pick them off. Yes, they did return for touchdowns, but they don't show up in the stats or the yards. Or like Smith Barney said, they didn't earn it. Okay, in the yardage in that particular football game. And I still think there's problems with this Iowa football program. All the off-field distractions and the ugliness that happened last year. I don't think it's over and complete and finished yet. I like Iowa State to bounce back in this football game and play a good, complete game.
By the way, the other big matchup I mentioned, Washington, Michigan on Saturday night. Washington loses to Montana. They had a 7-3 lead in the fourth quarter. They lose the game with 232 yards of total offense against an FCS team. Good FCS program, but it's still FCS, and you're Washington. This is important. Jimmy Lake. Yes, he was the head coach last year. He was the head coach of 4 games. So under Jimmy Lake, he is going now into his 6th game as a head coach. He's 1-4 against the spread. So I don't know what to. I don't know. And they played Oregon State, Arizona, and Stanford last year in 3 of their 4 games. So they haven't played anybody since he's been a head coach. Morris threw 3 interceptions last week. So I just tell you the truth. I don't know what to make of this Washington program at all right now. It's only a 7-point spread. I know Michigan lost Ronnie Bell. That's a huge loss. But I just see the direction of the program going one way and maybe another program going another. I like Michigan in the matchup. I don't know if I take the game. I don't know if I still trust Michigan at this point yet. I think they still have to earn it. But I just think Washington, they keep an eye on them because that loss may be a harbinger of bad things to come.
It is, but let me say this. There is so much that happens off of a week 1 result that people react or knee-jerk to in week number 2, and it isn't always the truth. You'll find situations where upsets occur, and then those football teams bounce back because they weren't as bad as the scoreboard indicated here. And Jimmy Lake, I'm going to give him a mulligan too. By the way, he coached for only 4 games last year. He had no time at all to get that football team prepared because of the COVID. No early camps, no nothing, just thrown right into the fire, and the kids had to get it down, and they didn't. The other thing is, this Michigan football team really struggled against Pac-12 football opponents. They're 1-11 to the spread in games against Pac-12 opponents going all the way back to 1998. And when Michigan's coming off a win in those games, I do not trust Jim Harbaugh laying double-digit points into a Power 5 conference team. I'm going to play Washington. Hold my nose, take the points with the Washington Huskies.
Is that still 7? The line?
Yes.
It's still 7. Okay. All right. ACC. Now, here's a game that I'm definitely going to jump on as far as an outright upset. And I know it could be one of those, kind of cutesy picks, but I don't care because Appalachian State got killed by Miami back in 2016 as a 4-point home dog when things were still going great for the program, and they lost embarrassed by 35 points. So the record's there. They've had pie in their face before. But if you look at it, over the last 3 Power 5 matchups for App State, they beat North Carolina in 2019 as a 1-point dog. They covered Penn State, losing by 7 as a 24-point road dog in 2018. And they lost by 1 point as a 5-point home dog to Wake Forest in 2017. So they've covered their last 3 against Power 5 programs. And this was obviously since that big loss to Miami at home. They're 8-2 against the spread, their last 10 of a dog of 5 or more. Miami has lost 11 straight as a favorite over the last 3 years. You pointed that out in the magazine. So they are capable of losing these types of games. And Miami's 0-10 against the spread in the last 10 as a favorite of 3 or more after scoring less than 14 points. I am just all over Appalachian State. Also, because Miami was a pretty good team last year, but they lost a lot of talent. They are not going to be a good team this year. And I think that was evident I think if Alabama wanted to win by 50 and they needed to, they would have. So this is going to be a long year for Miami. They're lucky that Derek King is the only thing they got going for them. But Appalachian State proved last week that they're still a good football team. They're still one of the best in the Sun Belt. And I'm taking them to win the game outright.
Well, again, I'm going to say reacting and overreacting to a week 1 result can be harmful. I know Miami did not look good, but the truth of the matter is, Greg, this football season, we're going to talk about every team that plays Alabama. Okay, Alabama looks like every bit as good or better than last year because they have a defense. They have a really rock-solid defense, which they didn't have last year. It gave Miami no chance whatsoever to open the football game up. They ran for only 87 yards on 31 rushes. That's pathetic. Not like they're a red-faced, embarrassed football team, but this is the kind of a game that Appalachian State lives for. It's taking on the big boys, the Power 5 teams, and dressing up as underdogs. It's what's put them on the map. They've thrived in this particular role. 8-2 to the spread is a dog of more than 5 points. I'm with you. I like Appalachian State in the game. I don't think Miami is as bad as they looked. I just think that they're going to have to get their act together before I lay points with them. Hence, I'll play Appalachian State, the Mountaineers, in this game.
In the Big 12, I wanted to just throw this one out there, and that is the fact that Cal is getting 11 from TCU. They've covered 8 straight as a non-conference road dog of more than 3 points, and they're 8-2 against the spread. Their last 10 as a road dog. I just want to bring that up because TCU, I just think they're a better team than Cal, and I just wasn't very. I mean, Cal's defense is not where it was a few years ago under Will Cox. He's lost a lot of talent. I was expecting more out of that offense, and it's just not very good. But this is a tricky game to keep an eye on because, again, TCU is, I think, the better team, but Cal has some pretty good trends going for them.
Well, TCU ran up a big score against a bad team last week, and sometimes it doesn't work well for the Horned Frogs. They're 4-11 to the number when they come off a win of 40 or more, including 0-5 to the spread when they're home favorites. California looked bad to Nevada, but Nevada, I'm going to warn you, is a very, very good football team. We're going to be hearing a lot about them. In fact, this football Nevada is going to be in the running for a New Year's Six bowl game this year. So the gutsy win that they eked out at California was indeed a good win for the team. I'm also a big Justin Wilcox fan. He's 17-8 to taking over the Bears as an underdog, 14-3 when taking more than 4 points in the contest here. I'm going to grab the points with the Bears in this football game. Look for TCU to come back down to earth.
Yeah, and speaking of the Mountain West, they had a couple of big games last week. That was one of them. But they also had some disappointing performances, and one was from San Diego State. They trailed 10-0 to New Mexico State at halftime. They won the game 28-10, but they got outgained by the Aggies, which is not good. But and this is why they're a 2-point dog to Arizona. I think I would have guessed that the line in this game 2 weeks ago would have probably been San Diego State as a favorite by a touchdown. But I don't know, again, what to expect from San Diego State because they're usually an ugly offensive team anyway. But Arizona actually is the story here because they played a lot better than I think people thought that they played, and they lost, but they outgained BYU last week, which was pretty impressive, and their quarterback threw for 336 yards. I like the new head coach. The former assistant, NFL assistant with the Patriots. I think he's going to have Arizona in the right, trajectory. He'll recruit there. There's a lot to recruit there. And they're just 2-point favorite at home. I think Arizona's not a bad play.
I think Arizona's going to be a sneaky football team this year here. I think the coordinator, Dan Brown, he's a terrific defensive coordinator. He's doing a wonderful job with this football program. Yeah. You mentioned what you've got in this game is a double inside-out stat situation here where Arizona won the stats and San Diego State lost the stats. But losing the stats to New Mexico State, there is simply flat-out no excuse. New Mexico State is one of the 5 worst teams in all of FBS football. You lose a game to them, you can't have any excuses. It was a flat-out bad performance here. They could be flat as a pancake, San Diego State, or they could not be any good this year. But the fact of the matter is Arizona laying points in a football game until they prove to me that they belong. I think It's a real tough game. I'm going to stay out of it because they can make ugly cases for both sides.
Also in the Pac-12 and the Mountain West, actually old West Coast teams big rivalry, Utah, BYU. And I'm going to go with Utah as a 7-point favorite in this one. Look, I watched the BYU-Arizona game. We just talked about Arizona and that matchup. BYU, they don't have Zach Wilson anymore, and you could tell. I mean, you go from a top 2-pick quarterback to just another college quarterback. That's what they have, and that's a huge, huge difference. And it showed against Arizona. Now they step up in competition against Utah. Utah 8-0. And this is, I only know 8 games. So I'm sure you've got the information on more than 8 games because I was looking at the guide again. I wasn't looking at the newsletter, but Utah's won 8 straight and covered 6 of 8 against BYU. So I don't know if that's even worse, but that's why I'll take Utah and give the points.
Well, this is a BYU football team that is going to be a football team in name and reputation this year, not a good quality football team, even close to what they were last year. Not only did they lose Zach Wilson, they lost Jeff Grimes, their offensive coordinator, who was a wizard. He's the person that was behind all the success for Zach Wilson and helping him become the number 2 pick in the NFL football draft. He's gone. Wilson's gone. This is not the same BYU team that we came to admire last football season. This is a very good Utah football team here. They're 6-1 to the spread the last 7 times they've been out as road favorites. This is the Holy War, and I would be really surprised if Utah doesn't win this game. If they're going to win the game, I'm going to have to guess they're going to beat the spread, and I'll lean with the Utes in this contest.
All right, couple of games in the AAC. The rivalry, Air Force Navy. The home team has won 8 straight, so that bodes well for Navy. And the dog has covered 5 of 8. But, I mean, and look, I'm not sure I'm even taking this game, Air Force by 5. Navy is just not very good if they don't have a dominant quarterback. And they've been very lucky for a long time with really good quarterbacks. They don't have one of those. And it showed last week against Marshall. If they don't have a good quarterback, they're not moving the football. Now, maybe he's on the roster somewhere. We haven't seen him yet. It's happened before in college football. It's happened before in the service academies. Week 3, the 6th quarterback on the roster comes in and he's Keenan Reynolds. So anything's possible, but right now Navy doesn't have that guy, but the trends are all telling you to take Navy.
I'm going to take Navy in the football game here, too. You've got Ken Niumatalolo, their head coach, who really, really performs well in certain roles, and one of those happens to be when he's playing with revenge. 22-15 to the spread in his career. You say, well, that's not a great number. No, but it's a good number. And inside that 22-15 number, he's 13-6 to the spread when he's coming off a loss seeking revenge. I like military teams playing one has the revenge and was beat the year before by the other, because you're going to get a big effort from the team. There's no lay down by Navy here. I know they're not the Navy we've come to learn and love here most recently in the past, but the revenge factor is a big factor in this game here. I'm going to play Navy plus the points in the payback in this game.
Now, I don't have any trends on this game. This is just a game that I like because I'm a Mike Bloomgren fan, and I think he's going to turn things around at Rice. He's already been doing that over the past year and a half. He had Arkansas in a close game in the fourth quarter last week, and Arkansas scored a few touchdowns late to cover. Houston melted away in the second half last week. Holgerson's got all sorts of problems there. I wouldn't be surprised if Rice actually pulled off the upset on Saturday night. Again, I have no trends. I got no data. I just have what I've seen from both of these programs over the last year. And last week didn't change my mind any bit of the direction of both teams just yet.
Well, if you like Rice to pull off the upset, you must have read the Playbook newsletter, because that is our upset game of the week. Rice
there you
over
go.
Houston.
See, and I didn't read the newsletter
to win this football game.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Give it to me.
I'm with you. I'm a big Mike Bloomgren fan. Yeah. Da. He's got this football team where it's on the rise right now, this Rice program here. They're not the Rice team that we've seen in the past that couldn't win 1 or 2 games a year. This is a Rice football team that's on the come right now. On the flip, Daniel Holgerson is vastly overrated, vastly overpaid, and is thankful that Houston's going to be going into the Big 12 conference. Thankful because it's going to be a $1 million bonus on top of that contract that he signed by getting them into the stealing money in Houston these days. Dana Holgerson is. And you can't continue to keep playing bad football and expect to win games here, especially when you're favored in football contests against a team on the rise like the Owls are. I like the Owls to win this football game straight up on this field. They're crosstown rivals. There's not a lot of travel here, but it's still going to be in Rice's home field here, and I think they take down the Cougars.
A couple of quick other games. Wyoming at Northern Illinois. Both teams scored with under a minute to go last week to win. Wyoming beat Montana State with a game-winning touchdown with 47 seconds left and won the yardage by only about 26. Northern Illinois, game-winning touchdown and a 2-point conversion to win the game with 38 seconds left over Georgia Tech. But they lost the yardage by over 100. This is at home against Northern Iowa. I just was a little surprised that the spread was 6 because Wyoming doesn't blow a lot of teams out, just the way Wyoming plays football. I like Wyoming when they're a dog. But when they're a favorite, especially in a situation like this, I kind of stay away. But a big win for Northern Illinois and the coach there. I think it's his year 3. We'll see how that goes week 2 for both of these teams.
Well, the head Wyoming is a terrific head coach. He was very highly sought after as an assistant, and people expected him to go from Wyoming to a Power 5 conference. If he has the kind of a year that I think he's going to have this year, I think they're going to have a really good football team this year. I know they struggled the first game. They got 21 starters coming back, and they were ranked number 2 overall in returning production rankings. That means players to the 2 deep on this football team. Very, very experienced. You talk about Northern Illinois. They're green in the secondary here. They start 3 freshmen and 1 sophomore in the secondary for this football program here. They're just 2-11 to the spread when they're at home against opponents that are coming off a win. I think Wyoming's the much better football team here, and I think they win this game comfortably.
Okay, now here's an interesting matchup that starts at 11:30. Conference USA versus Independent. Western Kentucky Army. And I was very surprised that Army blew out Georgia State. I thought that was going to be a good football game. Army just demolished them. 258 yards rushing is okay, when Army wins, but I actually expected to see a little bit more. So I don't think it was anything earth shattering, but they only held Georgia State to 177 yards. That was the impressive thing. But that's not going to happen against Western Kentucky because Zappy, that's right, the transfer from FCS, threw for 424 yards and 7 touchdowns in his first matchup, and they played an FCS team. But they had 587 total yards. They were a 7-point dog in the game. I think this is going to be one of those really good early games to watch that nobody's really thinking of paying attention to. I'm intrigued to find out if Army's for real, that defense. But Western Kentucky, I think, has a little bit too much offense when they're getting 7. So I think I'll take the points.
Well, I'm going to lean the other way. I'm not going to play Army, but I'm going to lean the other way in this football game. They went undefeated at home at Michie Stadium last year, 8-0 for the first time ever at Michie Stadium, and that was built in 1924. So Army's done a lot of good things here of late, especially at home in contests. And Army has also dominated the Conference USA. They're 6-1 against the spread when their opponent is undefeated, as it is in this particular football game. And I'm taking a look at Western Kentucky here, and offense came alive. It had to because they've been missing in action here quite a bit here the last couple of years. I like Army in this football game. I like Jeff Monken as a head coach, and I think he'll make a statement here in this football contest at home.
And the last game I wanted to mention was the Liberty-Troy game, because I was a little bit surprised that Liberty was only a 4-point favorite. If you look at it, Liberty is 18-6 the last 2 years. Troy is just 10-13. So this isn't the Troy from a few years ago. Both teams won easily last week against FCS opponents. Liberty has covered 6 straight after they scored 35 points, and they're 5-1 against the spread versus an opponent off a double-digit straight-up win. I just think Troy's getting too much respect like the old days. I know it's a home game, but Liberty's been the better program over the last couple of years, and I have no problem giving 4.
Well, Troy is the epitome of that theory that I have about the red-headed stepchild, especially when they were playing teams from Alabama, playing Auburn, even playing UAB. But the 2 big schools, Troy always gave their best effort because the players in the Troy team were not recruited to Alabama, and so they would step up in those football contests. That's waned down a little bit here, a lot here of late since Neil Brown left to go to West Virginia. So the program's not quite the same. Liberty's, on the flip side, a team that's really, really played well since Hugh Freeze has come aboard the football program here. This is an ironic stat with Hugh Freeze, though. Whenever he plays, he has the same identical record as his opponent. In his career, he's 8-3 straight up and against the spread, but 6-0 straight up in ATS in non-conference football games here. I think Liberty's the much better football team here, and I think they win comfortably in this game as well.
All right, want to remind everybody once again, even though the newsletter is $10 weekly, if you're like me and you just want to get it over with and save a little bit money and do it the bargain shopping way, then you want to purchase the newsletter, the playbooksports.com newsletter for $99, which turns into $89 if you use the bonus code PRIME. And you call the number on your screen there, 1-800-321-7777. And again, those are like 20-plus issues all the way through to the Super Bowl. So that's a great bargain, plus the $10 discount by using the bonus code PRIME at 800-321-7777. Mark, appreciate it. We'll talk again next week. And just looking forward to watching more college football this weekend.
Hey, Greg, I'm with you. I'm looking forward to it as well. Great start to college football last week. Hope the NFL is just as good this week, and I'll track you down next week.